Monday night edition of the Crash the Pond podcast. Happy season opener eve to everyone. By the time you're listening, you'll be one day off from the season opener for the Anaheim Ducks. So it's exciting.
Felix, you have a layup today. What's the holiday for the day?
Oh, well, isn't it Indigenous Peoples Day?
I was actually giving you a much easier layup. Isn't it Canadian Thanksgiving?
Oh, is it? There you go.
Well, that was yesterday, wasn't it?
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah.
Felix is the Canadian one. I tried.
Yeah, no. Incorrect. Let's see. What is today's national holiday?
But it is Indigenous Peoples Day.
Yeah, there you go, Jake.
It is Indigenous Peoples Day, also known as Nations Day.
Yeah, there you go. Jake just trying to take this off the train tracks bright and early in this podcast.
Sorry.
But as you probably heard by now, we also have CJ on the show. So that's going to be fun. A full squad to tee up the season. So really what we're going to get into, everybody, today is the announcement of the Ducks opening night roster. That's what we were waiting for all day. As the days approached leading up to today, was kind of, we could start piecing it together, figuring out who was going to be on the opening night lineup. And now we have our answers. And then after that, we will get into more of a season preview, just what our expectations are going to be for the season, different lines. It'll all kind of blend together. So really the biggest news out of this whole announcement for the opening night roster is the fact that Mason McTavish and Benoit-Olivier Groulx both made the team. So, Jake, what was your reaction to that?
I felt like after the game on Saturday, it made sense. It seems as if Groulx had a lot of momentum behind his name even prior to camp. It seemed like his name was mentioned by a lot of people as a guy to look out for, a guy with potential. And it's almost seemed like he was had pole position to try to get a roster spot if you were trying to look at some of the kids. And so he had a solid enough camp. I mean, I didn't think he had a great training camp until that final game. That final game is when I really finally saw what he could bring to the table with controlling play and doing a great job of that at 5-on-5. And so it makes sense. And I think that part made sense. And I think that Mason McTavish, as it got deeper and deeper into camp, it started to also make sense that they would want to maybe give him an 8 to 9 game look and see what he can do. I mean, here's the thing with McTavish is that in comparison to a guy like Groulx, and I actually thought that McTavish would make it and Groulx wouldn't as the time went on. But the thing with Groulx is he can go down to the AHL whenever they want, whereas Mason McTavish cannot. He has to go back to the CHL, and that's it. He can't come back up. So it makes sense why the Ducks would want to see what their number 3 overall pick that probably has an NHL-ready frame can do at the NHL right now and just see what they have. And it's really a win-win situation for Mason McTavish and for the Ducks. They have 8 to 9 games to see what they have in him and can really understand the player that they have in more depth against NHL-level competition. And if he can't cut it, then no big deal. You send him back to junior. He plays the entire year in junior, probably tears it up, and has that for his kind of development path. If he is able to hang, then you just have him also in the NHL, and not a big deal. And I have a bold take, but I'll let CJ get his thoughts in before I give it.
Wow, just total cliffhanger there. Thank you for that.
That's like at like 3:00 in the afternoon when the news goes, "Is this thing about to kill your children?" More at 10 p.m. Wow. No, so I'm gonna come in here with the numbers. Now I got to do the whole, it's preseason. These numbers mean very little generally and small sample size as well. But of the players who played at least 3 games or more in the preseason, Bo Groulx had the highest expected goals for percentage and the highest Corsi for. So Groulx was looking at a 57.89 Corsi for and a 58.24 expected goals for percentage. Which is absolutely outstanding numbers. I thought he had, even before the last game where he was particularly good, I thought he was great as well for the previous games. Maybe not as noticeable. I think last game was his most noticeable game. But it was really cool to kind of see him push, and it really seems like he was gunning for that roster spot, and he's been rewarded. Now, as for Mason McTavish, I'm not surprised either at that, specifically just because of the whole junior AHL rules and things that we've already talked about. I thought he looked solid. I wouldn't say that he stood out for the most part in any particular way, but I do think he did earn a spot over some of the other guys. This team, we all know, is not going to be great going into the season. So it's like, you know what? What the hell? Why not give him that few game look and see what he can do? I think the biggest thing that's important to remember with Mason McTavish is that he didn't look out of place.
Yeah.
And we're not expecting him to tear him up. We're not expecting him to be a star. If he can look like he belongs, then for an 18-year-old who just got drafted, that's fantastic. And that's a great baseline. So I agree with you, though, Jake, that I don't see him getting more than the 8 or 9 games. We'll see what happens. He could tear it up. Stranger things have happened, but that's my guess. But I think that for both Groulx and McTavish, these were very well-earned roster spots.
Well, I'm just going to jump in. I didn't say that I didn't think he would get more than eight games. I just said that could happen.
You said 8 or 9 game.
Well, they can do that.
I was going off of that.
Here's my bold.
He cited the rule.
I did.
You just said the rule. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fair.
That's all I said. And for those that don't know, I'll get it up right now, the exact rule, but it has to do with the entry level slide. Basically, all it is that if he plays, I believe 10 NHL games. Let me confirm that very quickly. Where is it? Yeah. If he plays in a minimum of 10 NHL games, this year counts off his contract. And so the year can no longer slide. So this counts as year 1 of 3. We actually went in depth in this so much last season, though, where it doesn't really matter, right? It's not as big of a deal as people make it out to be. From the Ducks' perspective, the bigger deal was honestly, what was it, the 41 games or however many games it was last year, where it counts as a year of service, an accrued season. That was the bigger issue, it seemed like, from their perspective with Trevor Zegras. So here's my bold take. Mason McTavish plays about 20-some-odd games, gets to the World Juniors, and then they release him for World Juniors, and then he goes back to the CHL after.
Interesting. That is somewhat bold because they have a lot of forwards. They have a lot of guys that they need to get ice time for.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so, that take was bolder than we were expecting.
Oh.
Like it wasn't lukewarm, but it wasn't like super hot. It was like right in the 90-degree area.
It's not that bold, but it's decently bold.
I'll give it a bold 7. Enough.
Oh, thanks.
I'll give it a 7.2.
Here's the reason for it. I think that they're going to want to get him into a stretch of games, see what he can do before sending him back. And I think the issue with the 9-game mark is it's not that many games. And so it's really hard to fully know what you have. And so I think he's going to play well enough where he's going to warrant getting more games. They're going to want to see him some more. And so that's going to make them want to keep him in the lineup. And then they'll burn the year of the contract, send him back before the year of service, because as we saw last year, that was, it seemed like, the bigger sticking point with Trevor Zegras, as I feel like we talked about ad nauseum. And then basically they would release him because they were I see no reason to not let him go play in the World Juniors, right? If he's going to make the team, which he should, you let him go and play in that tournament to see what it can do for him, and then you send it back to junior after that.
Yeah, and keep in mind with McTavish, he had an ankle issue to start camp, so he missed a decent chunk of camp. And Dallas Eakins mentioned that was an issue for them to get a handle on him as a player. Maybe not specifically in those words, but clearly wasn't happy about that. I'm guessing the rest of the team and the organization wasn't. They wanted to see more of him. And I think philosophically for this franchise, this is the way to go, is to let in as many kids as you can, see what they have. You have ways of, like you said, for Benoit Groulx, you can send him down. For McTavish, you can keep him around, even exceed the 9 games, and it's not really a big deal. And you can at least figure out what you have in him. And you're no worse for wear. It's a season for the Ducks where there's not a whole lot at stake outside of really that, finding out what you have in these young players. So for me, when I see those 2 guys make the team, I think that's exactly what they should be doing. Experiment and find out. And, hey, maybe that these guys will stick and they will be good right away. And if they're not, then that's fine. At least you had a chance to look at them as well.
Yeah. And keep in mind from the perspective of Team Canada as well, McTavish captained I believe their U18 Canada squad last season. So this is a potential captain, or at least alternate leadership for the World Juniors coming up. So that they would definitely love to have him from that perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also wonder, speaking of World Juniors, this is completely off topic, if they would have Jamie Drysdale go. I don't see any reason to do that. He's played in 2 World Juniors already. I don't think they will. Just an interesting thought. But in order to get to this point where they made the team, though, this is the interesting part, I think, of all of this. Jacob Larsson was put on waivers.
Yeah. I mean, that's the kind of side big news that, like you said, made all this possible. And so, look, with Jacob Larsson, this is probably, a year or two too late, right?
Probably.
With him. They kind of wasted a couple years of Josh Mahura to get to this point, and I think that that was all a mistake. Jacob Larsson was proving night in and night out that he didn't deserve to be in the lineup with his play, but at the very least, the team has made the correct conclusion now. And so, looking at the lineup for the opening night, you see Greg Patterin and Josh Mahura in there. Now, Greg Patterin, I remember when they signed him over the summer, was not especially a guy that I thought was going to make the team. I thought that was more of an AHL signing, but he has worked his way in, and it makes sense. They had so many defensemen who could potentially be on the third pairing, Cody Curran being one of them, and ultimately it seems like the lottery balls landed on Greg Patterin. I think that for their 7th D, or I guess for their 6th D, third pairing guy, they probably wanted a youngster in Mahura, and then Patterin is a bit of a hedge on that, a veteran presence that they can just plug in at any time. So we'll see.
Yep.
But I mean, looking at the roster now overall, so I guess one topic of conversation over the last week has been, did we just lose CJ?
I think we did. I'll text him and see where he's at. Here we go. We're good though.
Okay.
You and me until he's back.
Okay. Well, let's just roll on through here. So looking at the team now for going into opening night. And CJ's back.
Oh,
you don't have to text him.
I will put him back in. Give me 1 sec here. Keep going.
CJ just really messing things up
this week. My bad. This is what happens. I come back in for the first time in a while and I screw everything up.
Yeah. Some rookie mistakes going on here. Okay. Let's talk about the lines, because that's what everybody wants to talk about now, right? Is now we have the players. How will they line up come Wednesday night? And I think what's interesting about all of this is that you have 3 guys, to me, who are the big losers in McTavish and Bo Groulx making the team. And those 3 players, to me, are Nick Delorier, Derek Grant, and Sam Steele. I don't think that, because last year, and really the last couple of years, those have been guys that have been locks to be in the lineup night in and night out.
Yeah.
And I mean, you could argue undeservedly so with the results that they were putting up. So now with 2 additional bodies in there, I don't think we're going to see all 3, at least for the first couple weeks of the season. We're not going to see all 3 in the lineup every night. It's going to be a rare occurrence.
And Sam Steele, actually, I think it was 2 seasons ago, was the only player of that Ducks kind of young group that never got sent down. Max Jones spent significant time in the
got
AHL.
Scratched like maybe 3 games in that season.
Yeah. Troy Terry got sent down. Max Comtois. All of them got sent down besides Sam Steele, and now Steele is probably the only one out of the lineup. So yeah, I think you're spot on there that those 3 were locks. I mean, the 4th line, how long was it? Was it Grant and Delorier plus whoever, whether it was Carter Rowney, whether it was throwing whoever on that line? And it wasn't until about the end of last season was when I think one of Delorier and Grant started getting scratched. And now it kind of feels like that's where this is all going. And now, granted, I think it's important to have a healthy bit of not skepticism, but we haven't seen them play a regular season game yet.
No, we don't know yet what this will look like, but you would imagine that they didn't keep Groulx and McTavish on the team to not play.
Especially after the game, and CJ brought this up, the numbers that Groulx had and just how he played and
he scored some goals.
He did.
Handed, right? That's what coaches love to see.
That Jones-Groulx Grant line actually was really, really good, and it feels as if that to me, the fact that Groulx made this roster, the fact that Grant's still here, it really feels like that's going to be the 4th line going into the season. And honestly, as someone who everyone knows, not the biggest Derek Grant fan, it almost feels like Max Jones and Bo Groulx made him not terrible. And now we need a bigger sample size of it to make any
we need a much bigger
a much bigger sample size of it. But if that can continue and it can neutralize kind of the negative aspects of Grant's game, and he can just be a penalty killer for this team and be net even at 5-on-5, that's a big plus for this Ducks roster. But I mean, Max Jones at the end of the day, maybe you both will think this is harsh. He's probably a good fourth liner. Like that's probably his where he's at right now. That's where he's at. He on a good team, he's a good fourth liner. And
he doesn't
I
have
think
the offense to play higher, to play in a top 6 role.
No.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think with Jones too, like we've seen that he's actually had, like specifically last season, he actually had decent defensive numbers, where especially play driving numbers towards the, kind of going from defense to offense. So I feel like that if he doesn't have that offensive upside that maybe a lot of people thought he was, that he'd be a perfect fourth liner. And this is exactly, I think, what we talk about when we say, look, put guys with some level of skill on the fourth line. Don't make them this gritty, crappy skating, one-dimensional type players at the bottom. Max Jones may not have a ton of offensive upside, but he at least brings some skill, and he at least brings some positives other than just hitting, right? And this fourth line, I think that we saw in the preseason, one of the reasons why they were so successful, I'd be ecstatic if this is the fourth line of Groulx, Jones, and Grant, because they're the type of line that's going to be able to kill off some minutes without getting caved in every single night and can chip in a goal here or there. And really, that's what you're going to ask for most of your fourth line. This is what all three of us have been wanting for so long.
I don't share your optimism. I need to Derek Grant has been a black hole at 5-on-5 for 3 years.
I think that's a valid.
He has.
It's a valid point.
One good preseason game does not make
No.
A solid fourth line career.
No.
So yeah, I mean,
I'm talking about the line as a whole, not just Grant. I agree with you on Grant.
Well, yeah, but Grant is a part of the line, and
yes,
until he can, until that line can be good for an extended period of time, I just don't really buy it.
Yeah,
I just don't, because Grant is, his mobility is still an issue. I think the reason why it could work, the case for that line working, is because you've basically taken 90% of the defensive responsibility out of Derek Grant's hands, because he just doesn't have the skating. He doesn't have the awareness to be a center at the NHL level. At least not how Dallas Eakins was using him. Maybe the other benefit is that being on a fourth line, he's not going to be used in a matchup role, but we don't even know that, because we know the way the team views Groulx. Maybe they're going to feed him to the wolves right away, and this will be the checking energy line. But I'm very skeptical that will yield great results over time. But we also don't know what Groulx is at the NHL level yet. So maybe I'm going to sound like a moron in like 3 weeks.
Yeah,
we'll see.
And I think it's important to note, being a good fourth liner is not necessarily meant to be a negative thing. I think that some people may view us saying Max Jones as being a good fourth liner as being a knock on him. Maybe the fact that he was it's not great for a first round pick to become that, but
there's people still holding out hope that he's going to be an offensive guy or a guy who can contribute offense.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day,
he's what, 23? Yeah.
A late first round pick becoming a solid fourth liner is not a bad thing. Like, he's a solid NHLer.
No.
Like that is
he's a roster player.
That is a perfectly acceptable outcome for a late first round pick.
Yeah.
What is
exactly.
it? The chances something like the chances of a late first rounder, like 20th pick and later, becoming a regular NHLer is something like less than 40%. I think I saw something like that. Like the fact that Max Jones came in here, that's a good outcome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you guys seem pretty optimistic about that fourth line. I am heavily in wait and see mode, but we'll see how that pans out.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat.
Moving up to the third line. So right now, I mean, based off of the preseason lines, it would be Mason McTavish, Isaac Lundestrom, and Jakob Silfverberg. Now, that McTavish spot could be where we see same with the Jones spot on the fourth line. I think that's where we could see Delorier. And then the McTavish spot could be where Sam Steele comes in. But, I think that it's more likely that he and Lundestrom or Groulx could swap in and out. I think that he's still going to be a center based on what we know. But so how do you guys feel about a McTavish, Lundestrom, Silfverberg third line?
I think go ahead, CJ.
Go ahead. I feel like it's interesting. I think that something that we haven't talked about enough is how much there's so many question marks around Silfverberg's game post hip surgery. And luckily, he had the type of hip surgery that generally has pretty good outcomes. But at the same time, we all know, Ducks fans, I think more than a lot of other teams, know what hip injuries will do to a player's career, given the whole Ryan Kessler situation. And so to me, Silfverberg is a very interesting wild card to see if he can get back to his good level of two-way play. I think that, I actually like the fact that he's on a wing with McTavish. Silfverberg is definitely a guy who Bob Murray in the past has just gone on and praised about. He's the type of player that he wants to set an example for the younger kids, not necessarily in play style, but in terms of how he prepares, the professionalism, the effort that he gives each game. So if Silfverberg has some level of health, I feel like him playing on the line with McTavish is going to be very good for his professional development. And I think that with Lundestrom as well, I was pretty impressed with Lundestrom this preseason. I think Lundestrom, at this point, I've always kind of considered him a bottom six center, and this season he seems primed to be able to establish that. We'll see kind of what happens, but I think he had some good numbers last year and some flashes of good play. So I do like that line, but especially for McTavish's development, playing alongside on the opposite wing for Silfverberg.
Yeah, I mean, I think with Lundestrom, what we saw in the preseason is that he's getting better and better at transitioning the puck up ice.
Yep.
And that's a really important skill in the modern game, because you need a center to cover low, be able to win a puck battle, and either support the wingers along the wall or be the one to skate it out of the zone and then get it through the neutral zone. And I think that all of those things, he can do them very well. I'm not quite as high on what he can do once he gets into the other team's zone, but that's already half the battle, is just getting it there. So I guess, Jake, how do you feel about a young Mason McTavish playing on the wing as a rookie on that third line?
I mean, I think you'd prefer to see him at center. I mean, we said this was Zegras last year, but I mean, play him at his natural position. Like, I get people might say, like, you want to shelter him, all these different types of things, but it's like, this is the perfect opportunity to see what he can do, and see how he is long term. I mean, we saw it with Zegras last year. I mean, I don't think playing him on wing in the NHL did him any favors whatsoever. It seemed like I
think it could have been disastrous, honestly.
Yeah, because his game, once he went to center and came up, he was an instantly more impactful player as a center as compared to a winger. And so, I mean, we'll see if that's the same case with Mason McTavish. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. It could be a different player, different situation, things like that. I think overall this line is a decent spot for him to find himself on if they are worried about defensive responsibilities, because he's out there with one of the better defensive forwards for the Ducks in Jakob Silfverberg. And even last year when he was just poor offensively, he was still good defensively last year. And that kind of bared out in the stats.
Silfverberg?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. Silfverberg was still great last year defensively, despite the ailments. So I'm assuming that will probably, I mean, just due to aging, he'll probably be slightly worse this year. But on a third line, if Lundestrom can keep improving even slightly from where he was last year, and Silfverberg can stay in the neighborhood of where he was at last year, then 2/3 of that line is on pretty solid ground.
Yeah, you can
and then if you're Dallas Eakins, you just have to hope that whoever you slotted on the left can hold up their end of the bargain.
You could make the argument that
McTavish could thrive.
You could make the argument that Silfverberg will be better this year if he's been playing hurt for the last 2 years, and that could have caused it. Maybe he's not going to be pre-injury.
He's also just getting older.
True, agreed.
So,
but I think if he's playing hurt,
could go either way.
Yeah. But I just at least wanted to throw out that possibility. I think it's a good spot for McTavish. I think maybe if you're looking for him to have an offensive impact in the game, maybe this isn't the line for him to be on if that were the case. I would say if you wanted that to see maybe what his shot is, maybe you try putting him with Zegras. But this is a place where he's not going to necessarily be burdened with the defensive responsibility. He's going to have guys that can do that for him if that's really what they want to limit in his game. And, I mean, Isaac Lundestrom, you said it, is kind of blossomed into a pretty solid transition center. Maybe doesn't have the skill for the final offensive zone or the skill in the offensive zone necessary to create chances. But if he can get the puck to a Mason McTavish, and he does have that ability, maybe that's where it comes from, and Lundestrom doesn't have to do that.
Right. And with McTavish, though, I will say that we got to be careful comparing it to the Zegras situation, because I think McTavish's game seems a bit more suited to play on the wing.
That's fair.
Where
That's
I
a good
don't
point.
think it'll stifle him like a Trevor Zegras, who thrives on having open space, who
That's true.
thrives on being able to manipulate space.
Well,
And also, and with McTavish, doesn't really play that way. More of a north-south guy. He does have some playmaking to his game, but I think on the wing, it's not gonna hold him back quite as much. You still want to see him playing in his natural position. I agree with you on that note, but I don't think it'll be as detrimental.
And one thing I want
to
sorry, one thing I do
ahead,
really
CJ.
want to bring. Oh, go
Or
CJ.
Jake.
Fine.
Whoever.
Fine. Let me just say this real quick.
Russian roulette.
Yeah,
go Jake.
This will be real quick. One thing I wanted to bring up is one of the things for McTavish that was actually very important. Was the fact that he was the second best transition center behind Matty Beniers in this draft. And so if you're looking for a line that can potentially push the pace and get up and down offensively and also cover defensively, putting him with Lundestrom, I think, is a really good idea for that specific purpose. If Lundestrom can really...
He could be... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go for it.
Well, I was going to say that McTavish can also be the de facto center at times, right? Because the game isn't perfectly static. You're going to have times where you have one guy who's what they call the F3, who comes low just because of that's how the play shook out, and then he becomes the one to take on the center responsibility in that scenario. And so McTavish is very well suited to do that. I think that he has the skill set and he has the physical profile to be an NHL player right away. I really do, but it's just how do you want to manage that if you're the Ducks? Do you want to get the full squeeze out of the lemon now, or do you want to put that off for a little while and let the team maybe not be quite as good for one more year, and then you push every chip into the middle of the table? That's I guess the philosophical question with McTavish, but we don't even know what he'll look like quite yet. I have confidence that he'll be good.
Yeah, right I would agree that, like, if I were running this team, I would probably want to see McTavish at center as well. But on the other side of things, I completely understand the front office's logic by putting him at wing here for now on, not just because of the protection issue. Like, yeah, the protection issue is partially at play here so that he doesn't necessarily have as much defensive responsibilities at center. To me, it's really about his skill profile and what he brings. He has the physical profile, as Felix said, but to me, one of McTavish's best aspects is his shot. He's got a killer shot. And if he wants to focus on said shot, as an 18-year-old making his debut in the NHL, being on the wing isn't necessarily a bad thing. He doesn't necessarily have to think about other responsibilities. He is a good transition player, but he has a heavy, heavy shot. And if he can get himself into some position and make some good decisions, and demonstrate to the team that he can get into open ice in order to utilize that shot, because we've seen that over the past few years. There have been several Ducks players, Nick Ritchie being one of them, who have had good shots, but generally haven't necessarily been put into, haven't gotten themselves into open ice or into good positions to be able to use that shot. That's been a big issue, I think, for Anaheim over the years. And so having McTavish now, they want to see if he can get into that space to be able to flash that skill. So while, again, I agree that the center situation would be great for him, I do not mind at all him starting on the wing just to see kind of where that is, because the Ducks obviously need goal scoring. They need it more than anything else. And McTavish is a potential part of the solution to that goal scoring problem. So let's allow him to kind of focus on his shot, get the puck to him, and see what he can do.
Yeah, and I think with McTavish, there's also, and just why he's on the wing, there's a little bit of an internal hierarchy, right? Isaac Lundestrom has been around longer. He's older. He's going to be the one at center. Now, you could say, well, why is Groulx playing at center while Grant isn't? I don't know. But I guess it would be a little odd if McTavish came in and Lundestrom was the one set aside to the wing. Maybe that's why that's not happening. But in theory, you would think, wouldn't it make more sense for the team to want to see their third overall pick at his natural position immediately? Like, you're basically doing it so that you can have Isaac Lundestrom at center.
I mean, You could, but at that point, it's like, why the rush? You've got so much time as a new drafted person. Why
it's not a rush.
Experiment?
It's not a rush. It's just
seeing what you have.
Like what? Yeah, exactly. Like you drafted him to be a center. Like you didn't draft him to be a winger,
which is fine.
Yeah,
but again, I think that they're more concerned about seeing what his individual skill set can bring necessarily than the entire. I think they're more concerned with evaluating his skill set at the NHL level more than the entire package that he brings at this point in time. If this was next year, if he was 19, 20 years old and this was happening, then I'd say we've got a big problem here and that the Ducks organization is going around about this the wrong way. 18-year-old straight out of the draft, I understand.
Well, they're also the ones who were touting the fact that that they drafted him to be a center and that he's going to potentially be that 1-2 punch with Zegras. So it's just interesting that they're not putting him at center. I think that what it really says is that he might not be around that long.
Yeah,
like that he's just going to get his feet, that he's going to get his feet wet.
Yeah,
they care more about just kind of getting him some reps and then ultimately slotting someone else on that left side. And Lundestrom and Silverberg are the ones that they want to have that third line for now. Anyway, I mean, we'll see. It's an interesting conversation to have. I don't think there's like a right or wrong answer necessarily. Do you want to do the last two lines and then do our break?
Yeah, let's go ahead and do it.
These are going to be a little quicker, but there are some things to note. So I'm of the opinion, based on what we've heard Dallas Eakins say about his frustrations with the defensive acumen of the Max Comtois, Trevor Zegras, Rickard Rakell line, and the fact that they've been lit up in the preseason, him saying that you can't be a team that scores one on the power play and then gives it all back on, at 5-on-5. He really went into them. And I don't think it's a surprise to people who look at numbers because Max Comtois, for all his improvements, is still not a great defensive player.
Yep.
And Trevor Zegras isn't quite there yet. And Rakell is kind of, a little line mate dependent, what you're going to get out of him there. So it's not a huge surprise, but so I would actually be very shocked if we see Comtois and Zegras now on opening night. I think what's likelier is you have a second line of Comtois, Getzlaf, Terry, and then a first line of 1A, 1B, whatever you call them, Henrique, Zegras, Rakell. Agree or disagree?
I actually agree. And it's not necessarily that I
think it's also maybe the correct decision. Like if you at least just don't want to be terrible defensively.
Yeah, I think if you're going to have Zegras and Comtois together, then you need Terry there. Because I think you need Terry there because he's just solid defensively.
5-on-5 guy.
Yeah, 5-on-5, great defensively, can really help push the play, get the puck out of the zone. If you're not going to have Terry there, you're going to have Zegras with Rakell. I don't think having Comtois is a great decision of having them with him. And I think overall, I think I'd love to see Comtois with Zegras because you want to see that connection be made. You want to see those guys work together. That could be something that could work for the Ducks for years to come. But I think if you're trying to build out a lineup and maybe look at the plan for this season, I think having Zegras with Rakell is the right decision because Rakell could score a boatload of points, up his trade value as a result of playing with Zegras. And so I think that's the big benefit to having Rakell with Zegras. And so if you're going to do that, Henrique's just a solid player, both offensively and defensively. He's one of the best, I think, Ducks forwards.
He's okay. He was bad last year defensively.
Okay.
So, but I think he's still better. He's still better defensively than Comtois.
Yep, and that's kind of. I think he's solid enough.
Yeah,
and especially, I think transitioning to wing actually will help him for that aspect of it, and so I think you're going to see a benefit there. And I think both Getzlaf and Terry are solid defensively. I mean, Getzlaf, I think what was it? I don't have his player card up, but his defensive war took a big boost last season. And that was one of the best parts of his game. His offense fell off a bit, but defensively he was great. Troy Terry, like you said, 5-on-5, one of the best forwards defensively for the Duck, and one of the best forwards, honestly, at 5-on-5 in terms of pushing play, getting chances. And so I think having both of them with Max Comtois is a good decision also. And so I think this is probably the more optimal usage if you're looking about the long-term plan for the team and trying to up Rakell's trade value while also trying to build a competent lineup.
And even Henrique's trade value.
True.
I mean,
true.
I know
that's a good point.
That he's a much more difficult piece to move thanks to the 3 total seasons he has left. But having him next to Zegras, who, it's funny, in the small, tiny sample we had of Zegras last year, he wasn't terrible defensively. I mean, 53rd percentile in even strength defense, by Patrick Bacon's model. So I think that should only be getting better in theory. I know that Zegras still makes some very bold decisions with the puck sometimes on the ice, no matter
so
where.
Much fun. It's so much fun.
Whether it's in the defensive zone.
It's so much fun wherever it is.
One of his few plays in the rookie faceoff in Arizona, he tried pulling off a move in his own defensive zone in the power play and turned it over in the very first game. And it's like, yeah, that's just what he's going to do. He's going to try stuff, and you kind of have to take the good with the bad. I think if you're Dallas Eakins, you have to be very careful not to just muzzle his offense just to make sure he's more responsible. And that will be something to monitor this season as well. But we don't really totally – like that's kind of just my overall feel for this roster right now. Or I should say the forward group is we just don't really know yet what some of these key pieces are going to totally be.
Yeah, and
I think there's enough there, though, where I think they're just going to be fun to watch for a good little while.
And real quick, Getzlaf was in the 77th percentile in terms of even strength offense, 60th percentile in even strength defense. So
Ryan Getzlaf is still good.
Yeah,
like he was better than average last year.
Yeah, the only thing that was really dragging him down was on ice finishing and power play. Talk about the Ducks. Talk about the Ducks without talking about the Ducks.
And I think that's the key here of what Felix said is that the Ducks, there's like a 95% likelihood, maybe higher, that the Ducks are not going to be a good team this season. I think most of us have already accepted that. The organization has certainly accepted that by openly embracing the rebuild. What I will say is that based on the opening night roster that was there and the potential for some AHL people, namely like Sonny Milano and others who can potentially come up here, that this team, I think it is very likely that this team is going to be a whole hell of a lot more fun to watch this season than it has been in the last couple of seasons. They may not be good, but they're going to be fun. There are some intriguing pieces on this team. There's going to be a lot of positive. There's going to be a lot of negatives as well. But I think it's important to go into this season that I think we finally have some optimism that, look, if nothing else, this is going to be an entertaining team.
Well, that's the hope. Because if you're bad and you're not entertaining,
talk about the Ducks last season without talking about the Ducks last season.
Do you want to fly through the blue line real quick?
No.
Then we do the break.
Let's have a word from our sponsor, and then we'll jump into the blue line.
Okay.
So this podcast is brought to you by Green Chef. So Green Chef has a meal plan for every healthy lifestyle, whether you're keto, paleo. I just basically combined keto and paleo. Keto. There we go. New one right there.
Keto.
Plant-powered diets, or even if you just want to have delicious but balanced dishes. Green Chef's expert chefs curate every recipe with over 30 meal choices every week, and the flexibility to switch plans. Or with the flexibility of switch plans, you'll never have to sacrifice taste for nutrition. You can enjoy restaurant-quality dishes in the comfort of your own home. You can enjoy new and nutritious recipes each week that are perfect for you and the whole family. You can take homemade plant-based meals to the next level with Green Chef's plant-powered options. Or you want to watch your carb intake? Their keto and paleo options will give you the premium proteins and vital veggies you need to conquer. And Green Chef is the first USDA certified organic meal kit, so you can enjoy hand-picked organic veggies and premium proteins without having to worry about where they came from. So Green Chef is an awesome, awesome product. They've sent us a couple boxes. It's really nice because they give you a meal card for each of them. It's nice and easy. All the portions are nicely made out. It's very easy to tell what to do. And, I mean, here's the biggest thing. Their meals are amazing and delicious. So, for instance, if you go and look at their menu right now, they have, and this is one that I've had, their cheesy pesto burger is really good. It comes with like a pesto sauce that is mixed with Parmesan cheese. Really, really delicious. Some other things, they've got a cherry barbecue turkey meatloaves, Southwest beef patties with provolone, and these all can be made to fit your lifestyle. I mean, I've gone ahead, I've counted my macros, counted my calories. You can make these work, and it's great, and they're all pre-portioned. You get the meal cards to be able to keep with you for a long time. I mean, any other meals that stick out to you two?
Well, so I actually, this is kind of a niche one, but I'm someone who, I mean, you can roll your eyes all you want, but I do intermittent fasting, and a big part of intermittent fasting is to break your fast, have bone broth. And the bone broth that I've gotten from Green Chef, actually, there was one that was like a chicken broth, and it legit just tasted like restaurant quality pho. It was just so good. That kind of lemongrassy, lemony flavor, that was just so delicious. And I actually had the pesto burgers, amazing as well. So highly recommend, especially if you're busy or, even if whether you're working from home or at the office, it's just a good option to have.
Yeah. And just absolutely tastes fantastic. So you can go to greenchef.com/CTP125 and use code CTP125 to get $125 off, including free shipping. Once again, that's greenchef.com/CTP125, like Crash the Pond, and like $125, and use code CTP125 to get $125 off, including free shipping. That's the #1 meal kit for eating well.
By the way, I just want to say that I would trust Felix's recommendation for bone broth with my life.
Yes.
The amount of times he has sent bone broth like pictures to the
this
group
is way too true
over the years is like incredible. So if he says it's good, it's good.
Take it from me. I mean, if you like pho, which I'm assuming most people that listen to this podcast probably do.
If you don't like pho, I don't trust you as a person.
Just imagine drinking straight pho broth, but it's even healthier, fully organic.
So
I don't know.
CJ, when you started saying that, and it was about Felix and a food take, I did not know where that was gonna go. I was very nervous.
You got terrified.
I was very nervous. Green Chef are a great sponsor of this podcast. I don't want them sullied. CJ,
don't worry. No.
I actually CJ is correct. In my niches, I believe I have great takes, but whatever. Anyway,
Dalton Key says he doesn't even know what the pho that is.
Haha. Okay, let's talk about
Ducks. Our good friend Eric saying it's the official bone broth of Miller Lite. It's an old take. Do you want to finally rescind that opinion? Do you want to finally take back that opinion?
I feel like I'm on trial.
Do you want to take? I'm asking you. I'm giving you the ability right now. I'm giving you the ability. Way back when, people who don't know.
I will not renounce Miller Lite. I just won't do that. But I will say that I don't drink it hardly ever anymore.
Well, you know what, Felix? I respect you for being consistent. I respect you for your consistency.
So you still believe your take that Miller Lite is the best beer?
I don't think I've ever said that.
You have one. CJ, back me up here.
Check the tapes. Check the tapes.
No comment. I
are you guys trying to cancel me? Am I about to get John Gruden here?
Hey, I'm trying to.
Did I resign on the podcast?
Felix,
I just can't wait for you to submit your resignation letter. Like, I didn't mean to slander Miller Lite, and that'll be a deep drive to left field. It'll be a 4-0 ball game from Nick Castellanos. I don't know if I'll be putting this headset on again.
Wait, who's winning that game? By the way,
what the Monday Night Football game?
No. Giants.
Dodgers. Giants.
This is just taking a turn.
Okay,
so many sports.
There's so
Is
many
it really a
sports
3-person pod if it doesn't go off the rails at some point?
True.
It's already been on and off, and
we were on for a good period of time.
Okay, well let's try to hone back in here. We're actually already almost 45 minutes in, so I think we're making decent progress. So let's talk about the blue line a little bit. Not quite as intriguing, at least to me, as the forwards. Just there's less new faces, less different permutations that are possible, but even still worthy of discussion. Let's talk about the top pair. I guess the quote unquote top pair: Hampus Lindholm and Jamie Drysdale. Jake, are you surprised that this is where Jamie Drysdale has landed? At least that's what we think based on preseason lines, by the way. This could all change.
Yeah, so I mean,
we've seen so far.
Yeah, I think this makes sense because this is what they've utilized in the preseason. This also kind of goes in line with some things we saw last season, aka Josh Manson and Cam Fowler being together and constantly being put together by Dallas Eakins. Also, should note, Felix, what's the official pronunciation?
Of?
Dallas Eakins?
Of what? So I actually have a theory on why he said Eakins in that video. By the way, nice initiative by Dallas Eakins to give away his family tickets during the season.
There was a video put out by him basically giving out his tickets. And Felix, would you like to explain real quick before I get back on topic?
So when he was giving the link, it was he said /Eakins tickets, but I think he said that to make it easier for people to remember how to spell it. I don't actually think that's how he.
You think he mispronounced his last name?
Yeah, I do.
I'm with Felix on this.
Yeah, there you go. I had 2 against 1. Overruled. Overruled.
It's Eakins.
Well, it's always been said Eakins.
No, I know, but he said Eakins. He said it.
Jake, sample size. You can't take one instance.
Well, think about why he may have said it that way in that particular context.
I mean, it did say on the screen. Going back,
this is completely irrelevant.
I know, completely
Dallas
Eakins loves Manson and Fowler together. That was where I was going with it in the first place before I sidetracked myself.
Okay.
But Lindholm Drysdale makes sense because honestly, it's putting 2 of your best defensemen together, and two of.
Did you say best?
2 of
best.
2 of
best.
I mean,
2 of your best.
I would say Drysdale.
Is Jamie Drysdale one of the Ducks' best defensemen?
I think Drysdale's 3rd.
What evidence is there to support that?
Who do you have above him? I guess you could maybe say Shattenkirk. Yeah, I said 3rd. I said 3rd. Yeah, Shattenkirk.
Mahura, maybe.
Wow. This is just
look,
okay. It was an off statement that I'll take back if you want me to walk it back a little bit. But getting back to the point. Lindholm Drysdale makes sense. It puts your best defenseman in Hampus Lindholm. I saw you looking at me, Felix, making sure I was going to say the right name there.
Yeah.
With Hampus Lindholm, with the young guy who you want to kind of build him up. His numbers were not great last year, and I think this puts Jamie Drysdale on his right side. They're probably going to get tougher matchups, but I think this puts him in a position to succeed playing with one of the best Ducks defensemen. So I like it a lot.
Yeah. Well, I do want to say this.
That was a trip.
I think this is something that I need to address right up front. Like Jamie Drysdale last year, I know we've already talked about this plenty of times in the podcast, but I think it bears mentioning that Jamie Drysdale's numbers last year were awful. Like they were like league worst defensively. He was in the 0th percentile in defensive WAR. Like breaking news to everybody, that's really bad. And like we've talked about, there are definitely confounding factors of why that may have been, but the facts are what they are. He was truly, truly awful. And even if you look at his numbers away from Josh Manson last year, he was also still very bad. So weird season, teenager, probably in a normal world would not have been on the Ducks last year, would have been in the OHL. I think that's probably something we can all agree on. But again, like these are the facts that we're working with. So while I do think that Hampus Lindholm makes sense as his best possible partner, the one who can cover up for his mistakes the most, I do think that by playing with Hampus Lindholm, you're also going to be playing against tougher matchups. That's what you do when you have Hampus Lindholm. And to date, Jamie Drysdale has not shown that he's ready for that. And I do worry that the Ducks are putting him in the absolute fastest of tracks, the fast lane, and I don't know how much this will benefit him. It might in the long run. We were talking before the show about, is developing in the NHL better. And maybe this is a test case for that. And in the long run, this will benefit him. But I think that pairing could go a couple different ways. Maybe Jamie Drysdale takes a step forward this season and Hampus Lindholm really shores him up and they form a competent first pairing. Or on the flip side, he continues to be more of what he's been last year, maybe not quite as bad. And they are just a liability. I mean, even when we talked about Jamie Drysdale as a prospect, before he was drafted, we didn't talk about him as a guaranteed first pairing guy. We talked about him as a guy who has like a lock to be a top 4, but how high could he reach in a lineup? And now the Ducks are basically saying, you know what, screw it. He's a first pairing guy right away. And look, our philosophy that we always talk about is, hey, give guys a chance right away, see what they can do. Well, we're going to find out is all I'll say. We will find out, and it should not take very long either. So
look,
I'm not saying Jamie Drysdale sucks, by the way. Just I want to make this crystal clear so people
everyone come for Felix. Everyone come after Felix.
I don't think he's bad.
I think here's what you should say. to make
he has
people
a lot
happy.
of potential.
He could very easily improve on all those numbers this season, without a doubt.
Exactly. Like he can only go up. Like he actually can't get any worse from how bad he was defensively last year. So yes,
On the
I think
on the opposite side of Drysdale is a complete bust that Felix is clearly putting forward here.
Yeah, I hate Jamie Drysdale.
You just hate Jamie Drysdale.
I guess I just hate him. Yep.
I think that Felix brings up a great point that, like, you know, I think most of us believe that he's more than likely going to be a very good defenseman for the Ducks, that he's a potential future number one defenseman. But that said, you can't ignore the numbers he put up last season, which were awful. Now, definitely part of that can be explained by playing on his offside along with Josh Manson. But you can't sit here and take a player's results and pin 100% of their results on factors outside of their control. That's not how statistics works. That's not how sports works. Drysdale, frankly, was not good. Now, why was this? It could be the Manson, could be the...
Yeah, but CJ, he was in the NHL at 18. Isn't that worth,
oh my God.
Isn't that the biggest factor we should be talking about here? Shouldn't that just allow you to close your eyes to everything else? Look, he just made the team. Ignore everything else. Because, I mean, that's basically the case that you hear for Drysdale last year as well. Look, he was in the NHL as a teenager. What part of that don't you understand? Well, it's like, yeah, he sure was. That's pretty much the only thing you can say.
Yeah. Anybody who paid attention last season to us would know that, hey, look, we are capable of nuanced takes. You could say that Jamie Drysdale did not have a good season last year, but still think that he's got potential and still think that he could be something good, right?
Well, like it's stating a fact. It's stating a plain and simple fact of this is what he was last year, and the data shows that, and that is what it is. Sure, you can come up with reasons for that happening, but as explanation for it, but that doesn't change the fact that the on-ice play wasn't good enough. And so I think the important thing to indicate there is that as an 18-year-old, and this is, I guess, maybe where you factor that in, there's a whole lot of improvement that can come in his game, and a whole lot.
He's at that point in his career where he's getting better every year.
Yeah.
So. And keep in mind as well, like we said last year that Jamie Drysdale earned his call-up. None of us had said that he didn't deserve it. Like, he played well enough. He deserved to be there. He could have earned his call-up and had really poor results. Both things can be true. That being said, we've seen flashes of brilliance for him. I just recently reshared one of my tweets of I believe it was his first or second goal that he had, where he basically was literally the entire offense, that entire shift. Cool. And so he's shown those flashes, and he's at an age where he's 19 years old now. He's going to be alongside a better defensive partner than Josh Manson with Hampus Lindholm. He's another year older. He's had this training. We got a chance to talk to him during the rookie camp, where he was basically like, look, I worked on a lot of this stuff. So I still think, like, none of us are writing him off by any sense of the word. What we're saying is that, look, he was bad last year, but he still has a ton of potential. Let's see how he does this year. Is he ready for number one defensive duties yet as a 19-year-old?
Well, that's what the Ducks
I'm skeptical. The Ducks may kind of think that.
I mean,
and I agree with Felix, though, that, like, I'm skeptical of that. But I think that, you know, I'm just really worried that he's being thrown to the Wolves again, because he was thrown to the Wolves last season. He's probably going to be thrown to the Wolves again here. And depending on kind of how, you know, they end up deploying it,
I think I think one thing I want to add here, because yes, I think being thrown to the Wolves is a fair statement depending on where the matchups go, because that's the key aspect here. The one thing that we're forgetting here is he's going to be playing with Hampus Lindholm. And that is something that actually is going to help. That will be very useful for him. And I think that is something that's kind of being lost in this conversation when we're specifically talking about Jamie Drysdale. Hampus Lindholm,
they are setting him up. It's not purely, it's not a pure throwing him to the Wolves when you're throwing him in with your best defenseman.
Exactly. One of the better defensive defensemen in the league.
Yeah. So I guess that maybe that was a little unfair. I will retract that partially. Yeah. They're throwing him to what's not as bad as a Wolf. The Coyotes, the Mountain Lions.
It better be the Coyotes.
They're throwing him to the Bears, and he's with a Wolf.
What's more dangerous? Okay, there you go. There we go. I like that.
Yeah.
I mean, you almost have the advantage in that scenario, though. Wouldn't you?
Maybe you would then. It's possible.
A wolf
okay,
again.
The analogy no longer holds. Okay. Let's work our way down the other two pairings. So Fowler Manson, I'm just on this pairing. I mean, Fowler's been consistently solid the last couple of years. Josh Manson is not. Josh Manson has also not been consistently healthy the last couple of years, and I mean, was not healthy through this training camp. I think he should be able to play to start the season, but do either of you have, a strong opinion either way on this pairing?
I would agree with you. I'm just kind of whatever on this pairing. My hope is that, Cam Fowler, I would actually say Cam Fowler the last couple seasons when he hasn't been injured has actually been better than average. I would consider, him maybe in the top, between 30 and 40% of defensemen in the NHL.
He's been the Ducks' best defenseman because if you factor in the fact that Lindholm hasn't been healthy.
Yep. Yeah, no, 100% agreed. And the big thing for me is that I would hope that Fowler keeps that play up and hopefully maybe brings Manson up along with him, because with the Ducks being in full rebuild mode, now obviously there's still some skepticism. We will see what moves Murray makes, but Manson is going into a contract year. He's going into a free agent year. And we all know how much the Ducks love Manson, but it is a different look to not only the coaching staff, but also the front office with Jeff Solomon in the mix now, and presumably with the build out of an analytics team. And you have to wonder, if the Ducks are really going to seriously consider Josh Manson, having him alongside Cam Fowler, who has been the Ducks' best defenseman of the past couple of years, my hope is that he can at least play himself up a little bit for his value there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that long play, that's probably the hope, but will the Ducks trade Josh Manson this season? I mean,
who knows? I have no idea.
Yeah. And then to the third pairing. So this is where things get, I think, slightly more interesting. So right now you have, I guess, Kevin Shattenkirk is going to slot in there with whoever is going to be the sixth defenseman that night. I don't really see them scratching Shattenkirk. I don't think he's going to be in that rotation. So it's between Mahura and Patterson for the sixth spot. And I think that this is a long time coming for Josh Mahura. I know that last season some people were a little more down on him. He admittedly was not. I don't think he was as good as he has been in previous call-ups, but the potential has always been there. He has some decent mobility. I'm not going to call him a great skater, but I think he's mobile enough. Yeah. And he's got a really good hockey mind. He's a smart passer. He's got some hands. Mm-hmm. He's good at shifting forecheckers around when he has the puck to create lanes and break the puck out. I think he has that ability to be a solid third pairing defenseman. And I do think, contrary to popular belief, I think that him and Kevin Shattenkirk could be a good third pairing. And because I think that's probably where both of them should be at the respective stages of their, at this stage in their respective careers. Yeah. Kevin Shattenkirk probably shouldn't be much further up the lineup, and Josh Mahura, until further notice, is a third pairing defenseman. So I think it kind of works. And Greg Patterson, look, I don't have strong Greg Patterson takes. I'll just say that when Mahura has a turnover or Aikens just wants to put him in the doghouse, well, then you've got Greg Patterson that you can go to. But I am curious to see how that will work. By the way, Kevin Shattenkirk's numbers in this preseason, I don't know if either of you have
they're
looked.
Bad.
They're really, really bad.
Yeah.
If you want to make the case for why maybe they're not, you shouldn't read too much into them. He did play the majority of his minutes with Simon Benoit, who didn't make the team. And, if you look at his, just like, for example, shot attempt shares, Corsi for percentage, he goes from 33.9% with Simon Benoit, which is like, think of that in the reverse. If you're not as familiar with analytics, like that means roughly the other team has roughly 70% of on-ice shot attempts when those two are out there. Yeah. Now, Shattenkirk without Benoit jumps up to almost 45%. So still not great.
Yeah,
it's closer
preseason.
To respectable.
It's preseason. It's tough to fully read into all the numbers.
But I think that confirmed a lot of people's priors on Kevin Shattenkirk.
Because that wasn't how he was last year. I mean, the numbers don't bear out that he was a poor defenseman. Sure, he had some poor penalty decisions. Sure, there were some turnovers that caused...
He made a lot of glaring mistakes.
Yeah. But
the mistakes that he didn't make were very glaring.
The mistakes stood out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but overall, 5-on-5, taking everything into account, he was good. He was fine. He was good. And so I think Mahura and Shattenkirk will be an interesting pairing because I think that Mahura in a low pressure situation, he makes a really good first pass. And I think is better down low than he probably gets credit for. And so that could be honestly one of the better transition pairs for the Ducks. Maybe they're not the pair that gets up into the rush, but they're the pair that breaks it out quick.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, exactly. I'm going to kind of disagree with you there, Jake, that I've always seen, I think that, so number one, Shattenkirk isn't necessarily a defenseman's defenseman. We know this. If anything, he's a little more offense first, and that's been the case for most of his career. But for me, one of the things that I think Josh Mahura does the best is him jumping up into the play. He is always looking to go to the net. So, and that's actually a good transition of what I was going to bring up is that if you've got two guys who probably lean more offensive than necessarily stay at home or maybe defensively responsible, what is that going to look like if you've got the two of them there?
Oh, it's going to be fun
hockey. My personal take, it's going to be hella fun. I am so stoked to watch them jump in and then for them to turn over the puck and give up a scoring chance going the other way. We're probably going to see that a lot from that pairing, assuming they get more than a few games together. So we'll have to see, but they're especially Josh Mahura, he is a guy who is always looking for chances to activate. And so that is something that I think I'm going to really be looking for when he's on the ice.
Yeah. If that pairing actually lasts, I will be shocked. There's no way Aikens is going to be able to handle the stress.
No, and
pairing.
And one thing I want to mention on Shattenkirk is sure he gave up a decent amount of goals against. He also gave up a decent amount of expected goals against, but he made up for that by being one of the best Ducks defensemen at driving expected goals for and goals for and just kind of everything that goes along with that. So sure, he had glaring mistakes that led to goals against, but it kind of you took that with the thought that he also was out there generating offense, which for a team that struggled mightily to generate offense, I'll take a guy that does that over slow, boring hockey.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, if the Ducks actually stick with that third pairing, it's gonna be interesting to watch. I think so far, if I had to grade the moves that they've made so far, I think that it's kind of a little bit of a hodgepodge, but some of the big pluses I will give them. Finally biting the bullet on Jacob Larson. That was a long time coming, right? And they finally did it. And they kind of got forced into that a little bit with Josh Mahura now not being waiver exempt, but even still, they made that call, so we will give them that credit. I think that sending down Sonny Milano is a little surprising when you consider some of the other guys.
That's something we haven't really talked about.
Well, there's just not a whole lot to say.
Yeah.
I mean, he played well. He played well in the preseason. I think he played well enough to be on the team. I think that the team probably was just not going to move off of a guy like Grant or Delorier, and they were not willing to put Sam Steele on waivers for however many reasons. And they also wanted to see Bo Groulx and Mason McTavish on this team. And I think if you kind of boil all of that together, it's probably closer to being the right call, because ultimately Groulx and McTavish, the team has invested more in them and what they can be for their future. They're higher draft picks, especially McTavish. So they want to see what they have in those guys. And at some point, if McTavish goes back to junior, or if Bo Groulx gets sent back down, I would assume that Milano will be back up. So I don't see it as a huge deal. I still think just logically, Milano would be the guy that I would have gone with. He makes more sense. I mean, if nothing else, you can just get him to produce a bit, get him on the power play, and maybe trade him, flip him for futures. Who knows, right? But I think overall, the way that the Ducks have treated this preseason, the moves that they have made, the roster decisions that they have made, I think it's an encouraging start. There's no, if you noticed, everybody listening, the way we've talked so far, last year and the last couple of years, there's always been a head scratcher. There's always been something that we've really lamented over. And this time that just hasn't been the case. It's all been mostly fine moves. Tell me I'm wrong. Somebody, please tell me I'm wrong about this. Am I becoming a homer?
You're wrong, Felix.
Is this a
I'm
homer?
only saying that because you asked me to.
Am I being a homer here by saying the Ducks are making correct moves?
No, you are.
No, I think we've all been, other than maybe the lack of trades and stuff like that.
Well,
I
that's the
think
thing.
that
Yeah.
that's the biggest thing. But otherwise, outside of that, I feel like the Ducks, like, they had a killer draft. We all loved their draft. They had some other moves that were, pretty good for them. Like, for the most part, this has been a solid offseason.
I mean, here's the thing.
Yeah.
Like, the Ducks not having signed anyone of consequence is the right decision right now. There's no reason to add anyone to this team that is a UFA, because, as we've talked about, the UFA market is god-awful. And you typically end up regretting those deals always 2 to 3 years down the line. It's very rare for you to sign a UFA and be fine with that deal every year that you've signed them for. I mean, God, even look at Derek Grant. Derek Grant signing a 3-year deal. That was an awful decision basically right away. But regardless,
I also feel like this management group might be on pause for stuff like that right now.
Yeah, and I think another part of it is we've harped on the fact that they should have moved guys like Raquel last deadline. And I think that they would have gotten the most value for him, the most value for Manson. I will say this, if you're at the point where
Lindholm.
What?
Don't forget Lindholm.
And Lindholm.
He's a pending UFA.
True.
Yeah.
Add Lindholm to that mix. But Lindholm was hurt last year. They weren't going to trade him at the deadline. I don't think he would have gotten much because he had that wrist injury. But bring it back to this, is that there is something to be said for, at this point in time, letting them start the season on the team to almost build up their value. Because if a month goes by and Rickard Rakell is killing it with Trevor Zegras, that increases his trade value. Hampus Lindholm, big thing there is showing that he's healthy after missing a lot of last year. Same thing with Josh Manson, and both those things increase their trade values. So I would have preferred to move them potentially at the draft when a team may have overpaid, or if they could have moved them last deadline where a team could have gotten two playoff runs with them. But at this point in time right now, not doing anything is smarter than moving them at this current moment, as in letting them build up their trade value for a month or so.
Or until Josh Manson inevitably gets injured.
That too.
Oops. Yeah, no, I think that they are doing this correctly. I will ask both of you. We'll start with CJ. Do you think, so I guess just one little additional note, how I grade the season for the Ducks isn't so much on what we all just talked about with the night overnight lineup decisions. That is part of it. It's just more so what they're going to do with those bigger pieces that Jake just mentioned, the Mansons, Lindholms, Raquels. So I will be grading them on that and what they do there. That's really what's going to more so decide the future of this team. So I'll start with CJ. Of those three that I just mentioned, and you could include Henrique in there, you could include, I don't think Silberg's in your trade, never mind. But do you think any of those guys get moved by season's end? How many of those guys are on the team by the time the season's over?
I think, given what we have heard from the front office so far this offseason, I think at least one of those guys is gone by the time the trade deadline hits.
Wow. Vanilla take.
It's a very vanilla take, but at the same time, it's like, this management group has not shown that they will execute on moves that need, at least in our opinion, should be made. And even going back to when Bob Murray took over as general manager in 2009, the biggest move he's made is Ryan Kessler, which is, frankly, that's a pretty significant move, but that was also teed up for him, right?
Really quick, want to jump in here because I think it's important to somewhat note the entire history of Bob Murray's tenure. It's funny, the first year that he was the GM, he sold at the deadline. He sold Sammy Paulson. He sold Travis Moen. He sold who
was
else?
He the one who traded Pronger?
Yeah, he traded Pronger away, but that was not a deadline. That was a draft situation. He sold. They needed to move money out. Yeah. And so he sold, I think, Sammy Paulson. I forget what he got for him. He traded away Moen to San Jose and got Benito and Timo Pielmeyer. He made another move that I can't really remember that moved out a player. So it's funny because thinking back to that, he's sold guys before, but it's interesting to think about. None of those guys were quote unquote, even though he was the assistant GM, they weren't his guys. He didn't draft them. He wasn't the GM that brought them in. And so I think that's maybe one distinction to be made. Now, is anything else? Because I got something else to say on all this, CJ.
Yeah, so let me finish here, Dan. Good point, but also Dan, dude. It's just, other than that context, which is good context, he really hasn't made that much in the way of actual impactful big moves. And trading Manson, trading Henrique, trading Raquel, all these guys, those would be pretty significant, impactful moves. And we can argue over whether, you want to make them or should make them or not, but there hasn't been a history of them executing and wanting to go ahead. And, we're now, year 3-4 of this rebuild, and we have all these players from the last playoff run who are still on the team. So while I do see the winds changing, because we haven't heard this language of rebuild and embracing and with some of the decisions that they've been making, we haven't seen this from them yet. And I think they point to a very good direction. We still don't have the history to be able to go off to think that, yes, they are definitely going to execute. They are definitely going to make these moves. So while I think that at least one of them will go, I agree with Felix that I'm going to be waiting, and I'm going to have a little bit of skepticism, but I am going to come in with a little bit more hopefulness than in recent years that they are going to get rid of multiple guys and get some good future assets for them.
Yeah. So here were the trades, if you're curious. These are the notable ones from that 2009 deadline. Steve Montador traded out for Petteri Nokalainen, so traded an older guy for a prospect that became nothing. Sammy Paulson and Logan Stevenson for James Wisniewski and Petri Contiola. So traded out an older guy and got a young James Wisniewski in. Travis Moan and Kent Huskins for Nick Bonino and Timo Pielmeyer might be the best one. There's obviously, this was in February, but there was Kunitz and Tangradi for Whitney, which turned out horrible.
Oof.
Although Whitney eventually became Wisniewski, which makes it more salvageable.
Yeah,
but still.
Also, Jake, do you think any of these guys get traded?
I think 3 of the 4. I think Henrique's the only one left standing. You
think that? Wow, I like this. Damn. This is what I'm here for.
Here's the reason.
Lindholm,
I feel like you could just say screw you, CJ. That would have been easier.
No, I mean, I think that I actually don't think I agree with that. But
so here's the reason. Here's the reason.
More interesting.
Yeah, that's partially why I did. But here's the reasoning. Sometimes you don't always believe everything you say on a podcast, but you do it for the interesting conversation.
Oh, cool.
But here's where I'm going with it, though. I think Bob Murray understands the situation that he's in. And I think that he understands that if these guys are not signed come the deadline, they have to be moved. There's no way around it. And even if you think that you have a chance at re-signing them, you have to move them, or else it's legitimate. If Hampus Lindholm walks on July 1st, or whenever it is this year, because it's not July 1, if he walks and doesn't sign a new contract, they don't trade him, they don't get anything back. That is something that could actually really be detrimental to this franchise.
Well,
long-term.
it's a
lost opportunity.
It's an inexcusable failure.
Yeah, and so and I really don't think Hampus Lindholm is going to sign an extension mid-season. It doesn't sound like from his quotes.
I think he wants to see what he can get.
Yeah,
which is completely reasonable.
He wants to test the free agent market. Yeah,
which is very valid for him to want to do. And I think as a Ducks franchise, you have to look at that.
Especially after last offseason with defensemen.
You have to look at that and say, okay, well, we need to move him then. Because if he's going to test the market, we're not the Toronto Maple Leafs where we can say, okay, we lose this guy, then we have a certain amount of free cap space now that we can use to bring guys in. Losing Hampus Lindholm and freeing up that cap space, the Ducks have $15 million cap space right now. The cap space isn't the issue as of right now. And so... They
need something tangible.
Correct. So I think that same thing's going to happen with all 3 of them. I think the only one that I think that I could see re-signing, honestly, and I could see the Ducks re-signing, and I could see him signing here still, is Josh Manson. And that's probably the one I least likely or would least want to see sign long term.
I think he has the least trade value of the 3.
No. Of the 3. I think he still has value.
Yeah.
I said
no. He has value.
I think
he has the least of Hampus, Raquel, and
you think
Manson has the least value easy.
I think he has more value than Raquel.
Huh. I mean,
that's a hot take.
Right hand shot defenseman, big, plays a physical game.
Yeah.
You could see a GM paying an arm and a leg for him.
He's also always hurt.
Agreed. But this is the NHL we're talking about, and NHL general managers. I'm not talking you or me right here. I'm talking about NHL GM putting yourself in their shoe.
This is also the NHL where everybody is risk averse as hell.
look at
and Josh Manson carries some injury risk.
You don't think Ken Holland, the Oilers are in a playoff mix. They have a need at right-hand shot defenseman.
Okay, the dumbest.
That's almost
GM
unfair that you bring up Ken Holland.
Hey, but this is a very valid statement.
Ken Holland who thinks Duncan Keith is. This is Ken Holland who still thinks Duncan Keith is a good defenseman. So I get
it. They happen with UFAs. I could see Ken Holland paying an arm and a leg for him. This is a guy, and so there are plenty of general managers like that. I use Ken Holland. Obviously, he's the easiest one to talk about because it makes the most sense because he'll definitely do that. But there are plenty of GMs that would do that. Look at how much guys are willing to pay for right-hand shot big defensemen. Like I think he gets paid. He would get the team more than Rickard Rakell. And here's the caveat: unless Rakell goes off, which he could.
Yeah, I think I do agree with the idea that Rakell is more production dependent. I mean, because all Manson really has at this point is his reputation. Like, if you actually look at what he's bringing in and night out on the ice, it's actually not that encouraging. Okay, so yeah, I guess just to round this out, so CJ said at least one is gone. Jake said all three. I will go 2 out of 3. I think that pick one of the defensemen and Rakell. I think one of the defensemen will re-sign. And
I think that's fair.
I think they should all be gone. I mean, that's what I would do. I think that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But hey, Hampus Lindholm is joining the rush now more. He's joining the offense more as has been beaten into our heads.
Wait, actually, here's a question. Here's a question. Here's an actual legit question I had not thought about until right now.
Mm-hmm.
Hampus Lindholm has been getting more power play time this year than I think I've ever seen him in the past.
Oh, no, don't.
Do you think they're trying to boost his trade value?
They've been putting him on the power play for years.
No, they have not.
This isn't.
No, they have not.
Worked. Yes, they have.
Last season, he was getting a lot of power play time before he went down.
They've been well.
I don't think this is a trade thing.
Maybe it is true that they are just talking about how great his shot looks, how much he's joining the rush to pump up his trade value. I think it could also be that they just have this notion of Hampus Lindholm as a guy who could be a power play contributor. Personally, if I was running the Ducks power play, I would have 5 forwards out there. I don't think that outside of maybe Cam Fowler, there's a defenseman that I would really want out there. Maybe Kevin Shattenkirk.
5. Give me all forward power plays.
I'll go.
Yes.
So
I'll go Shattenkirk. So I guess 2.
No, don't back out now. Go full.
Okay, 5 forwards. Play. Well, 5 forwards would be their most optimal unit. Because even though I like Shattenkirk out there, I still think that their best unit would have 5 forwards. I would rather have Getzlaf at the point than Shattenkirk. So, because I mean, you saw when Getzlaf and Zegras were both out there on the power play during the preseason, like that puck is just slicing through the penalty kill, and I don't think that that's going to go away. But I think that they're going to build their units maybe with those 2 separate.
So I guess he was getting second unit power play time.
Yes, he absolutely was.
He was averaging about 1:48 per game played.
Which is a lot.
Yeah.
For a guy who really has no business out there.
No.
I mean, all due respect.
So fair enough.
Is a great defenseman, does not have the skill set.
You know what? I was trying to come up with a fun point. You all had to poo-poo on it. It's fine. I get it.
So, and then the other thing I didn't want to say, or that I did want to bring up. So we haven't talked about the goalies yet. So Anthony Stolarz is your backup. John Gibson is the starter. There was maybe some talk that Lucas Dostal could impress in camp and be the backup. That has clearly not happened. And I think that that's, I wonder what the Ducks are going to do with Anthony Stolarz. I mean, I know that he's signed through next year, but I mean, do you just keep him around for the next 2 years as a backup to Gibson? Or at some point, if he's playing really well, do you trade him and then give Dostal the jump? Anyway, it's something more future to think about. I will say this, though. Gibson's comments today in the Orange County Register about how he's looking forward to another heavy workload, and that when he's, playing a lot of games makes him feel more comfortable, makes him feel more in a rhythm, and that he's prepared to go and play a bunch of games again. I think that that's completely the opposite of what we should be hearing, because John Gibson, what the Ducks should be trying to do is limiting the amount of games that he's starting to get the most out of him so that he can be the best version of himself, so that he doesn't burn out like he has the last couple of years. And I think Anthony Stolarz is capable of doing that. And so, look, maybe it's just Gibson saying, what's on his mind. And maybe that's not what will actually happen. But I just logically would think that if the organization wanted to get it to the point where that split is a little more even, and that they had those conversations with him and that they really wanted to get it to that point, would we be hearing John Gibson being so, forceful about how much he wants to play? I feel like it's less likely in that situation.
I think
Dallas Eakins has even said last year, try telling him to play less. So I don't know. It doesn't seem like they're trying, but maybe I'm completely wrong about that.
So I think something that we're not really talking about here is the development of Lukas Dostal. I think that how he performs in San Diego for the first half of this year is going to go a long way in determining the Ducks' future goalie situation, especially headed into next year. Because if it's true that John Hoven of the mayor John Hoven reported that the Ducks offered Gibson in Eichel deal, I think we have actually discussed the potential value of trading Gibson with the rise of Lukas Dostal, and I don't necessarily think Dostal's ready quite yet, but at every step that Dostal has taken, he has excelled, and he got time in San Diego last season. He was great in San Diego last year. If he comes up and he is killing it in San Diego, then you get to the trade deadline, and at what point do you really start to seriously consider Gibson? Now, really, realistically, Gibson has a lot of years left on his contract. You should get good value out of him. You don't just trade him for like a second and a third. It kind of depends on the goalie market this season.
That's the big question.
But
that's
with Dostal there, I think I agree that the goalie market some years is really hot and some years there's just not much of a market. It depends. So we're going to have to see how that plays out. But if Dostal performs well, then you could potentially see Stolarz, maybe even take over the starting spot for the rest of the season if they decide that there's a good deal for Gibson on the table there. But regardless, I think that having Stolarz is good. Like, he's not a starter by any stretch of the imagination, but even if he has to take over starters for a rebuilding team that's out of it by the trade deadline, I'm not going to have an issue with that whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean,
we'll see.
Here's where I'm at with this. It's kind of a thought process I've been having a little bit more of late. What it comes down to with John Gibson is, where's the trade market at? Where's the trade value at? Because I just honestly don't know. Like, it's so difficult to understand where the goalie market's at because, as you said, it could go all over the place. It generally always feels lower than it should be, and that always makes me a bit cautious. But the one thing I will say is you could always move Gibson, and as we saw this past offseason, it's not that hard to kind of find a goalie, right? Colorado was able to do that and get Darcy Kemper. There's always goalies out there that you can find. There's plenty of them out there that you can plug in and not have to deal with like what Arizona's doing or Buffalo's doing. They're doing that to basically be bad with their goaltending. But there's people out there that you can find that will do a solid enough job for you. And so if you want to go that route, there's someone that you can go and get in the offseason that could help fill the role, take time off of Dostal's hands. I think it has to be the right trade, though. And I think that's the key aspect here is I don't think you move Gibson in the same way as a Lindholm, Raquel, those types of guys, where it's just moving him for futures. I think it has to be moving him for something tangible that helps you long term, whether that is like an Eichel trade, whether it is who knows what else it is. An Eichel trade would make the most sense to me because it's getting someone that helps you long term, but it's a difficult situation because what do you do in goal? And I mean, like I said, you can find someone and you'll probably be fine, but you're getting Eichel to be good soon. And so, I mean,
by the way, I love that we're getting some Salem meows in the back.
Yeah, heavy meowing in the back.
That's what I deal with.
That's the beauty of an Eichel trade, though, is that you can be good now or later.
Yeah, I mean, here's the benefit of the Eichel trade for the Ducks right now. They are the perfect team for it. There's nobody else that's in that wants to be bad this year, from all reports. The Duck. It seems as if from the Pierre LeBrun report that it's the Ducks.
You got
and the
Minnesota,
Flames.
Vegas.
Well, the Minnesota, I guess, is not really in it anymore because of how their cap is working out with signing Kaprizov. And where that's at. So they're not really in it. It's down to Calgary and the Ducks is what it sounds like. And with Calgary, they're trying to be good this year. And so the Ducks...
Less willing to move.
Yeah, like the Ducks, you're in a perfect situation where you can subtract from your current roster, make yourself worse, and that actually benefits you not having Eichel for the first half of this year. Because that was one of the things, wasn't it, when we talked about potential Eichel trade, was the downside is you're not going to be as bad, right? Having Eichel in your lineup.
No,
well,
you'll be more entertaining. That's for sure.
Eichel's hurt, so
Yeah.
he's not going to be in your lineup for most of the year. The Ducks are a perfect, like that trade. I think I'm more convinced now than I've ever been that the Ducks are going to get Eichel.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm just
That's
full
your
of it
hottest
today.
take. You
Damn.
really buried the lead with your McTavish with like 20 games.
Yeah, right.
Hot take. That is your hottest take by far.
No,
Jake,
like
the
I don't
first
know.
rule
I
of
don't know if it's going to happen, but I'm just...
The first rule of clickbait.
Yeah,
Jake, the first
clickbait
rule
take.
of clickbait is to lead with the hot take.
Sorry. You know, I waited till we're an hour 30 into a podcast to lay out the real clickbaity stuff. It's for everyone that's staying deep. No, but I genuinely feel like the Ducks are, like, I'm more convinced.
This is for the real ones.
Like, it may not happen, but I'm more convinced now than ever that the Ducks are the perfect match for him. And because they're not going to get the same amount of value if they wait till next summer because of his no movement clause. They're not going to... The Rangers just re-signed Zibanejad. They don't have the cap space to make it work. The Kings aren't in. The Wild aren't in because of cap situation. The Flames don't want to subtract from their team right now to get a guy that's not going to be in their lineup for 5 months. The Ducks are the team that really makes the most sense for all parties.
Yeah. Here's the question, though. This is always the question, right, with Eichel. And I can't believe we're having this conversation for what feels like the 77th time.
You know, there is new information. Somewhat.
There is new information. No, but at this point in time, today, 9:26 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, October 11th, who are your untouchables in the Ducks prospect system? Because that's really what it comes down to.
Zegras, Drysdale. That's it.
Zegras, Drysdale.
Sorry, actually.
That's it.
Zegras, Drysdale, 2022 first round pick.
Yeah, I would have the two untouchables.
2022. Yeah.
And do you think it's possible to make a trade for Eichel without including this year's first rounder?
Yeah. I think you include next year's first rounder.
I think so.
I feel like if you're the Sabres, though, that would
include
be
a first rounder to get Eichel.
Yeah, I know, but do you think it's possible to make the deal without this year's first rounder?
Yes.
Yes, and the reason being is Connor Bedard next season. Connor Bedard is shaping up to potentially be better than Shane Wright.
Well, but here's the way that you do it.
Well, the Ducks might also not be as bad next season. So, if you're the Sabres, I would want this year's first because this is the year where the Ducks are going to be as bad as they're going to be.
Here's the thing. There's been talk of this. The Sabres completely understand, I guess, that they're going to have to do conditions on the pick in terms of games played. I would do completely in the sense of not draft position based, unprotected 2023 first round pick. But the condition would be based upon Eichel's games played. If he plays over half the season, then it just stays a first round pick. And I think that's how you would do it. I think that you can do it around guys and not include this year's first. And I think if you're the Ducks, you don't move this year's first because of where this team's at. The fact that Eichel does not make you better this year, which is a key aspect of it. And you could theoretically make your team worse if you're moving out like let's say a Max Comtois, let's say an Adam Henrique somehow ends up in this deal. The Ducks roster is actually getting worse by moving those guys out.
My two untouchables are Trevor Zegras and 2022 first. Those are my two untouchables.
Ooh, Drysdale's not part of that.
This has been a long-standing opinion of Felix.
I've been saying this for a while, and I had a lengthy conversation about it in our Discord over the weekend. Was it this weekend? Might have been. Last week.
Time's a flat circle.
Yeah. I don't see why Jamie Drysdale is untouchable. I mean, I understand that he is a great defense prospect and will probably pan out. All those things are true. I just think that where the Ducks ultimately want to be is Stanley Cup contenders, and Jack Eichel gets you significantly closer to that and allows you to build and have a Zegras Eichel 1-2 punch. And, we've seen in the league, elite offense is like superstar offense, forwards. That's what drives championship success, right? Of course you need a solid blue line. Of course you need everything else. But at the end of the day, it's those strong link offensive superstars that really stir the pot. And I think that you shouldn't, you shouldn't walk away from a deal because you're unwilling to move off a guy like Jamie Drysdale, who would be, replaceable at the end of the day. You could go and you could cobble together a good blue line even without Jamie Drysdale. You could go and sign in free agency a great defenseman. Of course, it's going to cost you an arm and a leg, but the point is, Jack Eichel is no grow on trees. Having that kind of firepower is rare in the NHL with an Eichel and a Zegras. And so I think if Drysdale is what it takes and you get to keep your 2022 first, like I would run to the table to make that happen. Maybe I'm too low on Jamie Drysdale. Maybe I'm insane, but that's just how I see the sport working these days. And I think it makes sense. Makes perfect sense to me.
I feel like you're letting Jamie Drysdale's results last season influence a little bit too much of this.
It's not just that, although yes, that is part of it. But even if he had been great last season, let's say that he had been great, I still just don't think that position is as valuable as a Jack Eichel. Like I just think fundamentally what Jack Eichel brings and at that position is just more important in this sport than what Jamie Drysdale, the fully realized Jamie Drysdale could bring. That's why it's an easy trade-off for me.
Here's the thing, Felix. I would agree with you if Jack Eichel was healthy in the fact that he wasn't dealing with potentially a procedure that has never been done on a professional athlete before.
Professional hockey player.
Right?
Professional
hockey player, right?
Yeah.
And so what Jack Eichel is healthy, I would agree with you. Given the injury situation, though, that's where I'm gonna have to pump the brakes.
I feel like that has been blown out of the water a bit here. Like, not saying by you, CJ, but just overall, I think that there are people I see out there that think like he has no value anymore because he has the injury.
He's just like
broken.
Not. Yeah, like he's just totally broken.
No, like this is not like it is a pretty big procedure, but this isn't like the risk here is not huge. Like he should come back, he should be fine. I think you put conditions on the pick to make sure of that, so that you're not giving up a Connor Bedard, for instance, if he's only playing half the season. But I'd be more than willing to give up Mason McTavish, Max Comtois at the thought of trying to get a Jack Eichel, because of Jack Eichel at 100% is a top 10 center in this league. Mason McTavish is probably not. So
between Drysdale and McTavish, you would go McTavish.
I think McTavish I would go McTavish over Drysdale in terms of giving up one of them.
Especially because the Ducks, the existence of Zegras.
Well, you're also getting a center in Eichel.
Really true. And you're getting a center in Eichel, which you have a Zegras. You already have that. Like, to me, the Ducks have a little bit more need to keep Drysdale around more than they do having, like, Eichel is fantastic, but they already do have Zegras there. If Zegras didn't exist, then I may be more inclined to agree with you there on the center side of things.
If you have Eichel and Zegras and you still have McTavish, then McTavish can be one of the better third line centers in the league. And then your forward group is just, assuming that McTavish actually gets close to his potential, he's a guy who could already be, who projects as a top 6 center. So if you have him playing on your third line, your forward group is going to be really dangerous.
You could, but then Zegras, you also have a lot of issues with your defensive group. Like, it's kind of a pick your poison situation.
I think that's easier to replace. I just think it's easier. Like, look at the blue line for the Lightning. I know they have Victor Hedman. I acknowledge that.
We've gone completely off the rails, and I love it.
You have Jan Ruda on your first pairing. Like, you have just guys who frankly aren't that good. It's just easier to get by with that when you have stars up front. Anyway.
You're also playing in an elite system where almost everybody's value gets pumped up a little bit. Like, did the Ducks have that same type of system?
Because the players are great. The players make the system. Like,
that's part of it, though. That's not all of it.
Well, I just think, look, if it comes down to Drysdale or Eichel, the answer is Eichel.
Yeah.
If that's what it came down to.
Fair.
Fair. And people, there are people who legitimately think Drysdale over Eichel, and I think that's crazy talk. It's madness to think that.
It's like the whole. I've done this a bunch. It's like the whole Family Guy thing. Eichel's and Eichel, or what is it? It's like Drysdale is Drysdale.
It's the mystery box versus the boat.
It's the mystery box. Yeah. Versus
we have no idea we still don't really know what Jamie Drysdale is going to be. Could be great, But like I said, even the best version of Jamie Drysdale, I would still rather have Jack Eichel, a top 10 center, top 12, whatever.
I think if you're looking, so here's where I fall on this. I think overall you're right. I think you're not wrong here by saying Eichel is the better piece there. But I think if you're trying to put together a package of things, I think you can build it, and I'd be more willing to give up a lot of other things. And I think that's where this comes from than a Jamie Drysdale. Yeah. And I think that's the key aspect here. I would not want to give up, because if you're looking at building out a roster, I don't want to give up a Zegras or a Drysdale to get Eichel. I want both of those guys here already to add Eichel to. I think you're willing to give up Mason McTavish because Eichel will fill that role that you might want McTavish to be in eventually, because then Eichel's the first-line center, Zegras the second-line center. You have Lundstrom, you have those guys now. I mean, you're fine. Obviously, if you had McTavish keep in the mix, that'd be great, because he would be the third-line center there. I mean, a top three center, or your three centers being Eichel, McTavish, Zegras would be absolutely fantastic, but you have to give to get. And so I think that's why I'd be more willing to give up a McTavish, and I think that he's someone that has a high profile that could help and get Eichel. So,
yeah, I mean, look, it's not crazy to looking at it from that perspective. I don't think it's crazy. This is just what I think. Like, this is my philosophy, and I think it has a logical case as well. But we'll see. I mean, now I'm like fired up about this Eichel possibility because Jake seems to think it's imminent. So
I just think that the Ducks are the most likely. I think that I'm more confident now than I've ever been that they're getting him.
Wow, that would be huge. Okay, well we're over an hour and a half in, and we were supposed to do a season preview, but I feel like this has basically been that. Like this, like
we've
this has
been
been
together.
This has been a season preview. I mean, we can do a quick. I'll give you at least two hypotheticals. Two hypothetical questions for a season preview. I'll start with CJ, and then we'll work our way around.
Sorry, folks. Based upon the time here, we're probably not going to get to questions on this show.
This is going to go quickly. Does Dallas Eakins finish the season as the head coach of the Ducks?
Yes.
No.
Okay. I'm going to go...
I don't know how I actually feel about that. I just want to disagree with CJ.
I'm gonna go yes as well. I think the bar has been set so low now that there's just no expectations anymore. So I'm gonna go yes. I think he finishes the season. Is he back next year, CJ? Is Dallas Eakins back next year? That's the bigger question.
That is the bigger question.
Without having seen the actual season that's about to happen.
Because I mean, we don't know for sure, but isn't it most likely? I think this is Eakins' last year on contract.
It is,
because he signed a 3-year contract, right?
It is, 100%.
So unless there's been an unreported extension, yeah. And I find it hard to believe he would have signed an extension at this point. I'm gonna go with yeah. I think they bring him back. I'm gonna say they bring him back on a 1-year prove it deal. I think this year we see a lot of good development from people. I think we see more fun. I think that the management staff sees what they want to out of this team.
Yeah, because the
brings
players
Eakins back for one more year.
That almost caused me to have a spick take. I was drinking water when you said that.
Jake damn near lost his mind.
That is my hot take for the night. I think he's back next year.
Wow.
I'm not saying I agree with it.
I would guess.
I am not saying I agree with that. I'm just
disagree.
I do disagree. Hey, my hot takes are at least like fun. The Ducks getting a fun player. Yeah, I'm gonna say no. I don't think Dallas Eakins is back next year.
I have a hard time seeing it because despite the fact that the bar is so low, they're still likely gonna lose a bunch of games, and I feel like that's gonna sour everybody's mouth. Now, here's the final question I have. Again, because I don't think any of us think they're going to make the playoffs. I mean, there's a range, right, where they could finish. They may be a friskier team.
Felix, why do you hate the Ducks?
I'm just trying to get to something a little more interesting than are they going to make the team? Are they going to make the playoffs or not? So is Bob Murray the GM of the team next season? CJ?
No. I don't believe so. I've had this opinion for a while because this is the last year of Bob Murray's contract, as we know it as well. I think this is the final season. He sees kind of the team move on to the next phase. and he steps into an advisor role to the new GM, and he leads the search for his replacement. I think he kind of, after this season, maybe goes into a semi-retirement.
Okay. You didn't completely steal my answer, but you kind of did. I think he becomes president of hockey ops, and they make Jeff Solomon GM.
Agreed. We've seen that a lot. We've seen that with a ton of franchises where the previous GM is, like we saw in Vegas, right? Vegas did that. A few others have done that. I agree. I think that's the route that it's going to go.
I do want to point out, as the Honey Badger has pointed out in our chat, that Mark Bergevin's contract is up at the end of the season.
Oh no! Don't give Felix
Bergevin to Anaheim. Let's get that going. I'm gonna go with yes, he is gone. No, he isn't back. Whatever you want to say. I don't think Murray will be the GM of the team, and I think because of that, I think we see a new coach behind the bench. I think regime change after this season, because again, despite the fact that the bar is low, despite the fact that all they really have to do to deem this season a success is that the kids get better, which they probably will just by function of being young, up and coming NHL players. That's kind of what happens at this stage of their respective careers. Early 20s is you get better for a few seasons before you start plateauing. Even despite all of that, they're going to lose a bunch of games. There's probably going to be some ugly moments. Like, I don't mean to be like a doom and gloom. It's just we've seen this show before the last 3 years. And I think that that's just going to solidify it, that they need a regime change. And will it be Jeff Solomon? I think he's the front runner right now. If I had to put a little money on it, I would guess Solomon. And I think that they'll want a new coaching staff as well. Will it be Joel Bouchard? Who knows? But yeah, I think I think a lot of Ducks fans would agree that this season is a win if it brings about a new GM.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah. So anything else, or we want to just
or everyone gets all the UFAs get re-signed. Murray, Aikens extended.
That is actually one thing about the extensions that I hadn't fully thought about. Is do the Ducks want to open their purse strings?
It seems like they're not letting
for a coach.
No. To extend Manson, Raquel, Lindholm.
Oh,
yeah. It doesn't appear to be that way.
I don't think so.
And I think that may factor into it.
The Sambiellis are willing to do that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we're almost 2 hours in. An hour 42. Giving the people as much content as possible before the season opener. Do you want to do questions at all?
I'm leaving this up to you.
Why not? A brief flirtation.
All right.
Let's take like 2 or 3.
All right, people, throw in your questions in the Twitch chat while I give the spiel. So for those of you watching on YouTube, yes, you can find us at youtube.com/crashspawn. Please like, subscribe to the videos there. It does help significantly. Comment there. I do read the comments, as Felix says. I will respond to them also. I'm spacing on the name. I'm so sorry. But someone asked on the comments actually last week, wondering where our episode was last week. So I had to tell them we actually took the week off because, I guess we're slackers like that, right, Felix? That look. Or on your favorite podcast services. We do this each and every week at 8 p.m. on Monday nights now. And you can find us at twitch.tv/crashspawn. If you have Amazon Prime, you get one free Twitch Prime sub each and every month. And it does expire after 30 days. You do have to hit that subscribe button after 30 days. Why have I got into my as if I'm like the host of like Thunder Mountain or something like that voice. But regardless, throw in your questions in the chat. Yeah, 100%. All right, here we go. I have a lot of questions. Heyo D-Flow asks, can you show Kevin Shattenkurt's JFresh card? Give me 1 sec. While I do that, Shadow Ops Gaming says, question, Caulfield 40 goals or Zegras 70 points? What's more likely to happen?
Ooh,
wow, that's a good one.
I'm going to say
that's a really good one.
I don't think either is that likely, to be honest. I think Caulfield 40 is slightly likelier. Again, I'm going to get the biased comments. I can already hear them.
I mean, because you are.
I think Caulfield
Felix,
40,
if it helps, I agree with you.
I think it's likelier by function of Zegras 70 points feeling very, very unlikely. Like, I think Zegras can hit 60, but the offensive environment he's going to be in versus the one Caulfield is going to be in with Nick Suzuki and Tyler Toffoli, I think it's just I'm gonna have to go
That's
Caulfield.
For me, it's the environment. Montreal is going to have a much better offensive core. Caulfield will have more opportunity to score goals than Zegras will have the opportunity to put up points. It's entirely a product of the environment.
But I don't think either happens.
All right,
here's
I also agree.
Real quick, yeah. The screen is now up. Ignore our faces that are completely cut off. You can now see Kevin Shattenkirk's player card. 68th percentile of WAR, 79th percentile even strength defensive WAR, 51st percentile even strength offensive WAR. So there you go, folks. I'm now going to put this back so you don't have to see our completely clipped off faces. All right, so let's go to this question. Lewis X209, favorite Chick-fil-A sauce?
No sauce. No sauce is the answer here.
Wow. You guys missed the discussion in Discord earlier.
I've never had Chick-fil-A sauce when I've gone to Chick-fil-A.
I do not eat at Chick-fil-A anymore, due to the whole, due to their social stances, and I think that's been well documented. I won't get into it here, but when I did eat at Chick-fil-A, I was a big buffalo sauce fan. I'm just a big buffalo sauce fan.
Here's actually the goat sauce, the goated sauce. Chick-fil-A sauce with buffalo sauce mixed. There you go. You're welcome. Try it.
That's interesting.
The best sauce is no sauce.
Try it.
Write that
Just
one down.
a Rush guy says, did Getzlaf play back-to-backs? That was the thing at the end of last year, remember?
Yeah, end of last year was tank season.
Okay.
That was full tank. Getzlaf on the fourth line on the wing. I mean, you hope that that's what that was.
Yeah. I think he plays back-to-backs.
All right.
Okay, I guess Giants are still up 1-0.
B1 Samdi said, what is the biggest trade Bob Murray makes this season prior to the 2022 draft? I mean, I'm just going to go.
So
he gets Jack
up to the draft?
He gets just before it happens. He gets Jack Eichel.
Yeah, I agree with that. You've talked me into it. Jamie Drysdale will not be in the package, though. I can guarantee you that.
Yep,
They're not trading him.
Yeah. All right. Jux Dragonaut, our good friend Eric Stites says, what possible world could exist where the Ducks actually see themselves in the playoff race and/or playoff spot at the deadline? And if so, what do they do?
I mean, it's the tried and true. Well, not tried and true. That's the wrong analogy. It's the old saying of kids playing well, Gibson playing great, and veterans bouncing back. The old saying that we've trumpeted on this show for 2 to 3 years.
We convinced ourselves that they would be in the playoff mix the last couple seasons. We bought in.
This is learning from our mistakes. I will say, oh my, that this season you could make maybe more of a case for it than in the past because Trevor Zegras is very, very good. Troy Terry is showing improvement.
Troy Terry is also very good.
He is very good.
I think Raquel is for some positive regression. John Gibson, I don't think can get any worse. If there's some health on the blue line, sure, that's where it happens. So I don't think it's impossible, but am I betting on it? No chance.
All right, let's end with this one. Extra Time FC says, what draft pick do the Ducks end up with at the end of this season?
Not the
Shane
one.
Wright, baby, number 1 overall.
Number 1. Let's go out on. Go. I'm going out on a high. Ending this podcast on a high note. First overall.
They dropped down. I do want to point out, Giants 1-0 win. Take a lead in the series. Should be noted.
Making it interesting. I'm just waiting. I'm just sitting here waiting for the Giants to come back to earth, I said as I sit in my grave 60 years from now. I've been saying that all season. They're going to come back to earth, and they never did.
They have the talent. They have the belief. Mm-hmm. It's an even year. It's definitely not.
Even year bullshit is back.
Okay. Yeah, there was a question about do the Ducks, are they spending more on marketing?
Oh, yeah.
Sorry. They just hired someone new for their social media. I don't know.
I mean,
Saint
Archer.
So the guy who's doing the social media, they actually hired last season, and I think he took over with their new media department. He's pulling double duty with social and the digital content to replace Kyle Shahara, who left for the Dallas Stars. I personally think, and this is coming from the guy because I work in marketing. For those of you who don't know, my day job is in marketing. I personally think, number one, it's who they hired and that they've given him a lot more free reign. But number two, I genuinely think they listened to fans over the off season and last season because there was a lot of discussion. partially sparked by us, where basically a ton of people were just like, the Ducks marketing social media is just not good. I think that it's mostly that they've completely reevaluated their strategy and that they're giving them a little bit more freedom. So we'll see how that goes. But I do agree. I think they've been a lot better to start the season, which is great to see.
Yeah, and like the behind the scenes stuff from the draft, and
yeah,
I think it's gonna be
St. Archer beer.
Understanding. Yeah, there's a Ducks beer. You know, I will
Brewery X beer.
Well, no, St. Archer came out with that Mighty Ducks IPA.
Yes, so St. Archer came out with that, but Brewery X just announced a partnership with them to develop Ducks beers, and and they're going to take over the naming rights for the beer garden and whatnot.
Yep, they've got the Quack IPA. They got a banner on the boards in front of the Ducks bench, but St. Archer has the Mighty Ducks logo on an actual beer.
Here's my quibble with that. Yes, with beer. This can has no eggplant. No eggplant color. It's just the jade.
So?
And
we need to grow up, Felix, from our Disney past.
No,
we need to leave it behind. Orange.
I think that they could have worked that in. Also, another quibble is that it says, and I wish it said Mighty Ducks.
That's a good point. That is a better quibble.
The Anaheim Ducks underneath the Mighty Ducks logo just looks incorrect.
Yeah, that is a little weird branding wise. I agree with you.
Yeah. I mean, I know why they don't do that anymore, but I just think it would look better. But it's still a cool can. Like I would drink out of that and feel cool, feel good about it. Okay.
I'm very glad the type of beer you're drinking is making you feel cool, Felix.
Jake is just dying to get out of here.
No, I'm actually looking up pictures of the Mighty Ducks jersey because I was trying to figure out how much actual eggplant was on the white Mighty Ducks jersey, and it's not that much.
The collar?
It's the collar and one stripe. It's not a lot.
Okay, fair enough. I guess I was wrong.
Yeah, so it's not as if it's trying to look like the white Mighty Ducks jersey, it's not that off if it doesn't have that much any eggplant on it.
You better hope that that's what it's trying to be, because otherwise, massive oversight.
Okay. Massive oversight.
Devastating.
I'm losing it. I'm just.
Hour 51 in.
Yeah.
Let's wrap this up.
There's just so many sports going on right now. Football, baseball, hockey's back. It's too much. My brain is scrambled. All right, everybody. Well, hopefully, if you have made it this far, first off, thank you. I'm impressed. That is quite the commitment. I think we tried to give you as much as we possibly could to kick off the season. It only feels right. We got to give the people what they want, and I think we did just that. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm totally biased here, but I believe that we accomplished that goal. So if you enjoyed what you heard today, if you enjoy our show, what we do here, you want to see it keep going, you want to see it grow during the season, a few different ways to do that. Number one, our Patreon page, patreon.com/crashthepond. 3 different tiers of support there, 3 different monthly pledges. For $1 a month, you get access to our patrons-only Discord chat, which is a ton of fun. You get to connect with other diehard Ducks fans. A lot of fun conversations. Sometimes it will be hockey related. Sometimes it will not be. We have different channels. There's general chat. There's hockey talk. Those are the 2 that I stick to for the most part.
You don't venture into the wrestling talk?
I don't. No, I don't go into wrestling talk. But hey, if you're a wrestling fan, there you go.
Yeah.
So it all works out.
It's a great time. It's me, Lewis, and Heyo D-Flow, just having a good time in there.
The few, the proud.
Yeah.
So that's for $1 a month. For $5 a month, you get all that we just mentioned. You also get access to 2 bonus episodes, and so those are episodes where, like for example, the most recent one we did our division predictions. So for the standings in each division in the NHL. So we'll go a little more league wide on those. So if you want to hear our opinions about other teams, we'll also sometimes go more in depth on the actual Ducks if there's a specific topic that we think deserves some more time. Or we'll just go completely crazy and talk about something totally unrelated. So if you enjoy the banter of this show, kind of the more unscripted stuff, I think you'll enjoy the bonus episodes. And then for $15 a month, you get access to, again, everything I just mentioned. You also get access to 2 watch-alongs a month that we do. And these are a ton of fun. Basically, during 2 Ducks games a month during the season, we do a broadcast where as the game is going on, we're doing a video feed and we're essentially commentating on the game Yes, commentate is a word. Look it up.
There you go, Bonnie.
There's been opposition to that in the past, so I have to make it clear. And yeah, so if you want something a little different, if you just want to hear our live breakdown as the game is happening, well, there you go. That's for $15 a month. You can find all of that at patreon.com/crashthepond.
I want to point out that we have for the watch along tiers, we will be doing one, and I'm trying to look it up. We will be doing one for Wednesday's game against the Winnipeg Jets. So for those of you that are at the watch along tier, expect that one to be the first one, and the second one will be, I believe it is Tuesday, October 19th versus the Edmonton Oilers at 6 p.m. So those are the 2 games for the watch along tier for this month.
Yep.
I will be at the game, so you guys have fun with that.
Does it need to become Mai Tai Wednesday, seeing as it's not Mai Tai Monday because I didn't get Mai Tais?
Yeah, you've already given me so much crap.
I didn't have time to get Mai Tais. I almost stopped by Bevmo on my way home to get it. Almost.
Now I want a Mai Tai. Thanks for
Cutwater Mai Tais are delicious. Everyone go have one. You'll understand why it always needs to be Mai Tai Monday.
Not yet.
But not yet.
Anyway, if you're not able to support us with the monthly pledge on Patreon, that's totally understandable. There's still some ways with no financial cost to do so. You can look us up on Apple Podcasts, leave us a rating and review. Those go a long way. We actually have a new review. And like as we usually promise, if you leave us a review, we will read it on the show. So here we go. This one is from Chase Smythe. Left us that. We actually would have read it last week if we had done a show. So thanks for being patient, Chase. The title, Best Ducks Podcast, 5 stars. Felix and Jake, and sometimes CJ, talk all things Ducks, along with some news from around the league, sometimes even using analytics. Sometimes, I think always, sometimes even using analytics to prove that Grant is an elite number 1 center. Yeah, that's definitely what we're doing.
Yeah, definitely sometimes
I'm
on that.
I'm glad you got the underlying message.
I feel like I just got conned into saying that. And that Cody Curran, or as Jake would say, Cody Curran, is the perfect power play quarterback with that big booming shot from the blue line. Sincerely, I really do look forward to every podcast every week. Thank you guys so much for this show. Thank you, Chase. Awesome review. Love when people work in the inside jokes into the reviews. That's what always gets me.
Yep. Is it not correct? Is it not Curran?
There's an easy way to support us. It's Curran.
Is it Curran?
Like yes. It 1000% is Curran.
Okay. I'll do that from now.
If you heard the I've told you
all
this.
I'm hearing now is that we need official media guide pronunciations for this show. That's all I'm saying.
The Ducks broadcast said Curran.
They also say Akins.
But the pronunciation guides are very helpful.
Yeah, and Akins is correct until proven otherwise. I just don't buy. I think Akins faked his own last name to help his charity. Which, hey, you know what? Good for him.
Great way to end the show.
I applaud that. Anyway, so that's one way you can do it. Apple Podcasts. You can also check us out on Spotify, or subscribe to. Well, in addition to all that, you can also subscribe to us on YouTube, which Jake already talked about at youtube.com/crashthepond. Subscribe there. Turn on your notifications. You get to see our live video feed from Twitch. You'll get to see some of the graphs that Jake will put up, different things. You get to see Salem the Black Cat and Jake's background pop up every now and again, or a lot.
Yeah, she was here for most of this one before she went crazy.
Yep. So yeah, I think that's everything. Check out our website, crashthepond.com. We're gonna have articles coming up.
Yeah, we'll start getting more stuff up as the season begins. Sorry, folks, for a little bit of a dead period. There's been a lot going on for all of us.
And then check us out on social media at Crash the Pond. Jake is on Twitter at ReindeerGames91. CJ is on there at CJ Woodling. Is it CJ Woodling? There's no underscore.
You got it.
Says it on the screen. Says it on the screen.
No.
Oh, you actually put my handle up.
It's been there the whole time.
I'm proud of you.
No one wants to do the underscore life like me. Anyway, at Felix_Sicard on Twitter. And that will do it, guys. Thank you so much for listening. Happy season, everybody. The next time that we talk to you, we'll have had regular season games to watch, to break down. It's going to be a lot of fun. Enjoy the ride. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.